Hello?
Uh,
Alright. Hmm. Yeah, it looks really cool. Blocking it means just getting it wet and letting it dry. Right on. Alright, so about when the rune classifier should classify when the rune is done.
mm,
Um so originally I was thinking, oh, this will be pretty straightforward. I think what we can do is just like if there's ever, as long as Jeff draws symbols that don't have a lot of open space, which I don't think he will, he hasn't so far, um, we can just do it to where, like, if there's too much space between two lines, it just sort of cuts one off and starts a new one automatically. I was thinking this though, like, will we ever want to have it? Like you talked about the whole like, oh, like your other self has like hidden all these runes around that are like traps or AI generators or something like that, and you can go and like, cross them out, which would deactivate them or something like that. Like, do we ever want to have it so that you can redraw and have it reclassify on a rune? How hard would
well,
that
yeah,
be?
I mean, that would just work by finding an existing rune. If you draw anything on top of an existing rune, then it just turns off. Like that would be how we would do that. We probably would not want to do the classifier again on that. Um, we could, but it would be like if we're gonna have runes that have effects that are dependent on the shape of the rune, like that have positional effects in on the rune itself, then that would be a bad choice because you'd need to then somehow combine the lines from your new line with the old lines, and then you don't know which lines are supposed to connect to what technically. That's like the problem that we're running into here of like, I don't know if you're seeing me stream now.
Hold on, I'll turn
Um,
on your stream. Uh, Alright, I'm watching.
so basically, the classifiers, it works the way it should. It does not draw
Oh, do you have
until it doesn't.
it trained on Jeff's attract?
No, but this is just to um, show the fact that once I unclick here, that's when it does its save, which is the same step as the classify. Um, but these lines, like if we're doing the triangle rune, for example, like or the attract whatever rune, right? I'm doing this. It's not going to know. These are three separate lines. it's not going to know which set of points belongs to the triangle.
Can you just
You
take the
know.
maxes or the mins maxes, the way you get the size, I think is maxes minus mins.
Yeah, I thought about for that for the triangle. You can probably take the one that covers the most area and consider that to be the triangle. But that's the type of thing we're gonna have to think about every time we do one of these runes. I am not sold on the fact that like um the I'm not 100% sold on this being the combine subtract rune and how it works entirely. I think that's gonna come down to um how we feel about uh, you know, um, how we feel about the thing. Oh, sorry, I'm struggling. How we feel about like how it feels when you're playing with it. But like, there's not only just that, but like, okay, so we have that, right? But what about this? I just released. That's a line. I just released. That's a line.
So
I just
I'm
released.
in my
That's a
mind,
line.
I think we should get rid of the releasing altogether and try and figure out a way to do it
Runes in
just
one pass.
yeah, just like if
I think
it,
that yeah, that's effectively what I was getting at. But without, I didn't want to explicitly throw out Jeff's rune ideas, but I was essentially getting at that,
oh no no no,
prepping people
I'm
for
saying a
that.
different thing actually. You're saying that everything should be drawable in one swoop.
Yeah,
I'm saying that you shouldn't have to hold down the right button. You should just have to hold down the left button. And if 2 points are far enough away from each other, it should just it should cut the line there and consider this a new a new drawing or a new part of the drawing. For the triangle thing, what I was thinking, how I would
well, it wouldn't know when to classify the rune then, though.
so
Like, when is it done?
right,
Or
I
are we
was thinking
constantly
this. I was
classifying?
for stuff like the triangle, I was thinking exactly this. Here, I'll stream to show you what I mean. Um, like we would call it one rune, right? But I think it would we could do it with with two classifications basically. Let me stream. Um, let's see here.
But like, it's not. It's gonna have to figure out when to classify. Like, if you're drawing a point and then the next point, and then the next point. Like, it's not gonna know. Like, the way the line renderer, both renders work is they don't connect the points until they are like they don't even make a point until they're a specific distance away.
Well, even if
Um,
we do go with the like we just want it classifying one method. We want one classification
yeah, we
function
definitely
run.
want that. We don't want it to be running constantly.
I'm not
It's very
100% sure. I don't want it running
intensive.
constantly, but I do think there are other ways to do it. And let me show you what I mean. Where is the stream button? There it is. Okay.
Yeah, they added another button. It really throws me off.
Um, my
How do
stream.
I? Oh, I'm clicking my name. That's fine. All right, I'm looking
All
at it.
right. So the I'm not saying we should do this yet, but it is a way. Is that we could do the triangle like this. You draw the triangle, right, and it classifies it as the duplicate slash combine rune at that point. Then you draw something like a single line or a double line in the middle, or maybe not two lines because that's two releases, but something like that. So like maybe let's do a like a minus or a plus. That's an easy one, or like an X or an O. Let's say, um, or just anything that's single swoop, but like maybe the maybe maybe like a Y shape, or like a versus like a single straight down line. But essentially what you could do is have it classify as the duplicate combine slash combine rune at this point, and then you create another rune on top of this that basically just creates itself and destroys itself and tells the other rune, okay, you're this type now. You're this configuration of rune now. That's one way. The other way we could do it is the one swoop way. The other way that's sort of in the spirit of the one swoop way is like, what was it? I was gonna say, let me think about this before I forget. Also look at this. Hope this works. I did this just for fun last night and it worked.
That's cool. I mean, it's
It's
just
just misclassifying
classifying it
it,
as a
but like,
circle.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
It looks right though.
yeah,
It looks
yeah.
really cool.
I mean, I say just leave it
Yeah,
in. I have
I
no
mean,
problem with
if that's
that.
stuff we want to approach, there's like, yeah, there's a game where like if we can't get the classifier stuff working, we can still use this drawing stuff and then just detect things like, okay, what does this encompass? What is your line? Like we can go that route if we fail
I
miserably.
don't think we will fail. I think we're on a. I think
Yeah,
there's lots of
I
ways
think
to
we're
do
on a good
this.
track too.
But the what was the other way? So um the other way is just like the other way is like I take away the right click and I draw the triangle, right? And it doesn't, and I don't, and I let go. It doesn't classify it at this point. And then
Yeah, but I'm
I
saying it's okay. So if you take away the right click and then you draw it, how does programmatically do we tell it to classify it?
this was the remember this was the thing we discussed last time with the ritual. Now I'm here and this isn't floating in the air. Let's pretend, and
Yeah.
I perform.
You would just like okay, so then you would just like add a reagent, and then that would trigger the classification.
Right. I would or a reagent or you just an animation, right? I just do an animation. I raise my hand and boom, it kind of comes to life, right? That's the
Mm.
that's the that's the compromise method I was talking
Yeah,
about.
I mean, we can do a method of like, okay, essentially your hand becomes a camera, um, but it becomes you have to deal with challenges of, okay, let's say I have two runes side by side, right? Like right here, this is I have this rune, and then I have like a square rune here, and I'm trying to just classify the square. We need to figure out how to just classify the square. Um, you know what I mean? I don't know if you're looking at
Yeah,
my
I'm looking
screen
at
or
yours.
not,
So,
but
so I know what you mean. Like
that's the challenge with that. That's the challenge with that one. I don't hate the method. I think there's a neat factor to that. There's something cool about basically about doing being able to draw whenever and forever until you activate it, and then it just suddenly does the thing. Like
yeah,
that's neat.
I'm not against
Um,
the one swoop method too because like if it locks us into relatively simple runes that can be drawn relatively quickly, so it makes it so that like you could have puzzles where like this puzzle is just about like you get launched in the air and you have some hang time and you have to
mm,
draw a rune real quick, right? Like
yeah,
that's fine too.
like this.
Like
There's also like the other thing. What I was saying in the text before. This feels really shitty to do.
to draw. Yeah, that's the other advantage of this of the one swoop thing is it's like it
This
has to
feels
be
great
some.
to do. You know, something like, or I guess the one I did over here looks better, but like this feels cool to just do that real quick.
Yeah, I'm I'm totally willing for the one swoop method to be our method. Um,
Like this could be a symbol. I don't know what the fuck it could be, but it feels nice to do. Not that. That's just an S.
what we should I was thinking this before and I totally forgot it until you just said this, but maybe what we should do, how difficult would it be for you to rig up a thing that where it would save we could put Jeff in the game and Dave and me and you and we could decide what we want the runes to look like and just sit next to each other drawing and it would save all of our drawings to the data set and we could go through and pick out the ones we don't want and so that we could the act of inventing the runes like coming up with them and designing them is
Be done in game and kind of
inherently
a
tied to
fun.
the game, right.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so right now the way it works is it dumps like it's dumping these photos out to these images out to here. Um, the images are actually insanely small. Like you don't need a lot of image, a lot of size to classify the image. Um, they're tiny, 256 by 256. You don't need a lot of detail to get the right image. But so right now it's just dropping them out to here. I could probably, I'd have to test, but I think there's a SDK, a software development kit for Amazon to let me just dump these same photos out to a, like, it's called a S3 bucket. It's just a storage bucket, Amazon's version of a storage bucket. And I don't think that we'd use enough beyond the free version to make it matter. Let's
Okay.
see. Yes. Um,
Are you going upstairs right now? You're fine, but
so let's see. How much is this? How much space are we taking up here? Okay, this is nothing at all. This is like, because these are such small images, it's absolutely nothing. So let's just say per month we're gonna store, at most 10 gigs of data, something like that. How will data be moved into S3? We're gonna do put request. Um, standard object size, average size for the put request will be less than a megabyte. I think these are. What's the size of the actual files? They're tiny, right? Yeah, they're fucking tiny.
there also is another compromise middle method, I think, or maybe a combination of the one swoop and not. But like this, whether we do the one swoop or not, we could do a thing where like we could also cut out the activate reagent or animation or whatever, and just have it say. Especially this would probably work better if we're doing specifically one swoop things. Just say,
Hmm.
just say like, if any point in this line is far enough away, or like, or actually no, you could just say at the minute the player lets off the button with the one swoop. But if we didn't go one swoop and we had multiple swoops, then you could do it where like, if any 2 points of the line are too far away from each other, and it wouldn't have to be a far distance at all if we designed the runes right, then
Hmm.
it classifies the old one and starts a new drawing for a new one. Um, I think that
We'll have to play around with it. I think there's going to be a lot of testing. I still think I believe that when everyone gets in and starts drawing with their finger, maybe I'm wrong with it. Maybe because of the pace of the game, it'll feel fine. Because the game's slow, you're going to be writing in your journal, you're going to
yeah.
be observing and writing, like it's going to be a slower paced game, like really about the observation. Maybe it'll wind up feeling more impactful when you have to do something that's a little bit of a pain. That being said, it'll feel really cool to do a one swoop thing and have it just do its thing.
Feeling a game feeling good
Um,
is never bad. Like even if it is a slow game, it can
yeah,
still feel fun to draw, to just really
yeah,
quick draw out a bunch of things and be like, I'm gonna shoot myself way up in the air, boom, 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 and then I do it. Like
yeah.
uh,
I agree. I think it should be cool. It should feel cool like that.
So I'm fine with the
Um,
one swoop method, but if we're going one swoop, then I think we get rid of the hold down right click and just go with the let go of the
We
left click.
theoretically wouldn't need the hold down either at that point. And then I'm not positive I want to get rid of it, but I'm more open to it with the one swoop thing. But like, yeah, we don't technically need it. I like the idea of like, in my mind, you would have when I hold right click, your hand would come out. It would just come out when you're holding right click.
Right.
But
So
but it doesn't matter. I'm open to that being just left click if we're doing one
I
swoop.
mean, it's fine
The
to
only problem
keep
with
it if
one
we're
swoop is you
getting
can't
rid
add
of.
cool.
When I was still conceiving of it as left click, the way the paradigm I had in my head was. So I moved pick up things onto E because that seemed pretty natural. I moved that onto E. So we have the whole mouse just for runes, and
Hmm.
the I was thinking left click draw, and then and with no holding down of right click, and then just right click does animation. But if we don't need the animation, if we decide to just swoop classify no animation needed, there's no reason we can't keep the holding down of the right if it feels good. But I just think simpler is better generally. Like
Yeah, yeah. I think that makes. Yeah, I agree. Well, we can play around with it. I think so. Yeah, and technically, there is the one big drawback of the one swoop method, where like you really do limit yourself on like what you can create. Like it's gonna be weird.
We could
The
also do,
symbols.
just like we could do surfaces you can't do runes on. We could do we could do, and maybe this is like the substitute for my, oh, what if we invent a, like a new higher class of rune that's like a language? Maybe there's a surface that is just, it's a defined surface, and whatever is in there gets classified whenever the player lets off their thing, but you can continue to add to the drawing more times. So like it'll
Maybe,
forever.
yeah, so you can have the iterative thing. Yeah, that could be a compromise to add in that other idea.
Like
But
those could
like
be locational, like puzzles that where you could draw things that wouldn't necessarily be runes in your spell book, but might be. You could do a puzzle that way, that where it
it
wouldn't
could be
have
like a
to.
weird one of those old Breath of the Wild things where you would just control like stand at a control thing and like move the whole level. Not exactly that, but like okay, maybe it's like a there's a ball in one of those like tilt puzzle things that you had as a kid, and first you use the repel thing to, and then putting the repel rune on that thing pushes the ball up. Then
Yeah,
you
like
draw
totally
something
unique.
else.
Yes, I love that. Like
Yeah.
totally unique. Like okay, like you're in a room with a long hallway, and the on the board, on the thing that you can only draw inside of like this special material, there's just a line, right? And so you can draw the runes you know on there, and that does things that has effects on the hallway, which is represented by the line or something like that, right? Like,
Yeah.
or the like, yeah, like you said, like there's a ball on a whatever, and you could draw it as if it was on the ball on the slate. I think that's a good. That way we keep both methods, and if we ever want to use this for Necroskull or something, we have it made both ways, and
Mm.
also like it allows us to both have our cake and eat it too, and that we have the one swoop feeling good thing, and then if we want the satisfaction of like making a complex rune to be something the player experiences, this is where they can do that.
Yeah. And again, like I said, the biggest worry I have with the one swoop method is that you lose the ability to do stuff like this. Like you lose the ability to do more complex symbols really easily. Like this is also easy to draw, you know, but we can't do that with the one swoop method. So then, if we compromise, if we still want to be able to do stuff like this, which is still
That is
fun to
true.
draw.
That is true. Like the boom, let go, boom, boom is like the letting go lets that good feel. It's just that the shape is simple, right? Not that it necessarily is one swoop. One swoop is.
Yeah, that's probably what it is. Is this like this just feels like garbage to draw. I don't know if it's just me, but I hate it.
No,
I hate
I
doing
could
it.
see why it would. It's a bunch of the very similar shapes with fine differences getting.
And you gotta like get the spacing right because this feels shitty. Because like oh fuck, well I didn't draw my U big enough, so now I have to try to squeeze in these tiny arrows. It just feels like garbage. But like this, you know, bam bam, I feel it feels
Yeah,
good. We
yeah,
could
yeah,
make
yeah.
you know we could train it so that anything that goes below here is considered a fail. And then like you know it's this weird sword shape with a circle around it. But the only problem, you know, the problem with this, as we've mentioned, is we might have to lose the low. We might have to find another way to identify like these points,
So we could do.
which we could do. We
We
could
could do
find
that
another
with
way.
so we could do that with, well, like this is what I was saying to Jeff. Let me pull up my screen again and show you what I mean
Yeah.
about the about.
Real quick before you say that, you just the other idea that you had mentioned. We could do it by biggest area. That still works for the triangle. So we could still make it triangular as long as wherever we do on the inside is contained and is not bigger area, and then that'll work just fine still.
Right, like we could do it either way for the triangle, because let me pull up my screen again.
If we're clever about how we design the rooms, we could still do stuff like that. It just makes it hard to design those, but those are going to be not every rune anyway.
Also, I thought about the fact that this is going to come up at some point in the game with puzzles, I think. It just came up naturally while I was testing. Is like, so I have this might be in reality a much bigger difference, but I have these three fruits in front of me, right? And say I want two of them to be uh, to be combined, right? I might want
Mhm.
them to be the combined thing to be in a certain spot. We'll say right here, right? So I would try to. Eventually, a player's going to try this. They're going to place an item here. They're going to place an item here, and then they're going to try to draw with the line going directly to those things. And it's harder than it looks to make it. It's easy to get one, but it's hard to get two in one. Like, and
Mhm.
it's fine. Like, I can just walk over here and move it, right? Or actually, really,
Yeah.
when this is fully done, like I'll do multiple raycasts and it probably will hit it. So never mind that
We don't even need to do raycast if we want to just place a freaking
collider.
collider on each corner. Then we could have a little more air, a bigger area of a
I
bigger area of
I
recognition.
had a collider in the beginning and I switched away from that and I can't remember why I did. But I could switch back. It
Gliders are
might be that.
probably more intensive, I would imagine. Like, yeah, raycasts are supposed to be kind of expensive, but I feel like a collider is way more expensive. I don't really know, actually, when you think about it. It's like a collider, you're just checking if something's inside a square, right? If you're doing a square collider,
Yeah.
and that there's like a function for that. So
Um,
I'm not sure.
But like when the player's drawing the triangle, right? There's two ways we could do the triangle. Either the corners in terms of like where you load what I call like it being an ingredient that goes into whatever comes out of it as loading the corners. So when you load the corner with a thing, you're going to be drawing. Originally, I was thinking like, oh, it'd be better to do like a single line or something, or like two lines because we want the player to load whatever corner they want. The way it should work is like I just put two things at a corner in this case, and something comes out of this one. And in this case, I put one thing at a corner and two things come out of this one. Right. So, but if we have the circles and they're like in the corners in the rune design, then I feel like the players are going to assume that this corner and this corner have to be loaded. And that's fine because they're drawing they're putting those circles there, so they're going to do that
Hmm.
anyway. But it would feel weird, I feel like, if I drew this and put something here, and then nothing, and then something came out here, because it feels like I should be loading here, and something should be coming out here.
Yeah, definitely, I agree with that, but we could, I mean, theoretically, we could find the corners positions that are closest to the circles because the circles will be their own distinct lines. So you could just find, knowing that the triangle is the biggest area covering line, or area covering one, we could identify the triangle and then find the one that's closest to the other two, the corner that's closest to each other one, and then you can ensure that it always has the same configuration, more or less.
Right.
Um, so that's doable. I'm leaning towards, again, still having, after talking and drawing, I don't want to give up the ability to do the multiple lines. I think it's too important. I
Yeah,
think we can get around the triangle stuff, but I do think we need to have a redesign of the runes
I
because I
do think
don't.
we should draw them, have Jeff draw them in game, and have us all draw them
Yep,
in
I
game,
agree. Yeah.
like, and I do think, like, I would, the way after talking I would do it is this: we do the we do the multiple lines, and then we either do an animation or we do like is this thing too far from the rest of the points you've drawn? If so, consider it a new rune way of like determining when to classify if we don't want to do the um the animation thing. I do think the animation thing has utility though, because like if a part of this game is going around and sucking the life out of fruits and trees and stuff to give yourself power to draw these runes, that's a night like it's gonna feel weird if you just draw a rune and then it's just like, okay, your power's gone, it classified now, like
Well, I
plop.
figured it would go, like you would be holding that thing in your hand, or you'd be up, like if you're close enough to like the tree here. Then if I right click by an object that you can draw power from, it would it would put my hand on the tree, and then like the animation occurs when you release the right button. So you still get that feeling of I'm activating it. I'm doing some sort of some sort of hand gesture to activate this, but it's really just just showing that you're releasing the
Yeah,
button.
I,
It's
I
just a
definitely still want the tree, like put your hand on a tree thing, but I was thinking like it might be for the stuff that's like handheld that like the holding in your hand and drawing at the same time thing. That would look cool, like you see the fruit wilting as you're drawing or whatever. But like
mm.
also if I'm drawing multiple runes, it's like is it gonna am I just gonna be continually taking apples out of my pocket over and over again and
Yeah,
tossing
so
them?
what I was thinking is it's a way of us containing and limiting what the player can, how many runes the player can draw. So like I was imagining, I think I drew this in one of my concept art things that I sent you guys. But basically, I imagine like, okay, let's say you're holding an apple or a frog or whatever, and let's just make it real simple. We don't have to do any other modeling. If it's just all that happens is the apple will lose its color. Essentially, it just becomes
Yeah, I thought the
monotone.
same thing. Or I thought
Yeah,
it could we could throw your rabbit thing on it so it gets all otherworldly and weird, like the soul's been removed from
yeah,
it.
yeah. So as I am, so as I'm drawing, I drain that color, and then I get to the end, and if I want to get that color back, I need to suck it back up.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that part. Yeah, I do like
So
that.
and then that like sort of limits makes an inherent nice limit for what the player can draw in a nice diegetic way, and we can have these objects of power that were like these reagents. We could have them not just be apples, or we could like it would be nice if there's a reason why like you can't just go get another apple. You know,
Yeah,
we'll have to find a diegetic reason. We could just make it so that the player will only be able to collect one apple, and then they know, okay, that's my limiting factor. But it would be nice to have a diegetic in-world reason, like, oh, this is a special apple, or something like that. Like regular apples don't have, like maybe you can pick a regular apple and try it, and it just like it starts to draw and then fizzles immediately. It just doesn't have enough juice. But the apple from the special tree
yeah,
can do it.
I like that way. So with that way in mind, I'm thinking, okay, you're holding something in your um right
One of your
hand.
hands. Yeah.
Um,
In your dominant hand will allow people to switch it and just mirror the model.
this isn't my preference right now, but I do think we should stay open to the idea of maybe, like, some players may find the holding two things and always having to have something in your right and left hand thing to be, like, people complain about anything, and little things annoy people a lot of the time. So we should
Depends on like
stay.
how much we're forcing people to pick things up. But yeah, go ahead.
Right, like if that's their limiting factor, like maybe I don't like the idea that there's any progression, any permanent progression in this game. So I was gonna say like maybe at a point you can switch between these two modes, but we should stay open to the idea. I think of like I considered a method where like you can just suck the apple up anytime and it fills up a like a heart meter or like a stamina meter for your magic power, and then that drains when it's classified, or maybe something like, oh, it stays until the next, at sunset, it goes away, or something like that, unless you sleep in a bed or something like that, or like, just like you can, but the details don't matter, but the idea of
Yeah, yeah,
like,
I get what you're saying. Yeah, there's something about like that. That does make it a little easier too for the player. Like maybe you have like a handcuff or like a glove or something that shows like three color bars, and you can suck those things out of different uh, objects or whatever, and then
sort of like Valheim, where you can only have 3 food slots or whatever. Like
yeah,
you can have
well,
a
so like, yeah, well, it depends, and then maybe like it could just be like, okay, there's a red, green, and blue bar. Apple gives you red, but so does the I don't know the water, or I guess that water wouldn't make sense, but so does the lava. Also gives you red or something.
right.
I
Yeah,
don't know,
but
something like that.
we don't need to figure out the details right now. But just in terms of like when the classifier classifies, like how it relates to that, I think we should keep open to the idea that maybe that might end up feeling better in the end. But I do think we should continue under the general model of like you're going to be holding something in your right hand while you do this generally. Um, and
Yeah, it also kind of explains why, like, if this is magic, why it seems a little bit silly that you could just cast something with drawing just a picture, right? You would need something else, which is nice. It has some interesting pieces there, diegetically.
but yeah, I think the method, yeah, we'll go with the multi-line method. And then, so what do you think of the multi-line methods? Would you rather do it with an animation, or would you rather do it by literal spatial, like try to have it smartly say, I think the player's drawing a new thing now. It's far enough away from the
Oh,
old
the
thing.
multi-line method, my preference would still be holding right click
I'm not saying
and
that. That I'm saying like, when does it classify? Does it classify when you
release the right
when
click.
you release the
Yeah.
right click? So I like.
It just makes it nice and simple so we know exactly what we're classifying. We can get a good picture of what we're classifying. Um, it's much simpler that way. Um, but the we could do the if we can find a way to solve the problem of I've drawn two things. Um, how do I know which one when I'm ready to classify? I guess the when I'm ready to classify would be the animation. But how do I know which thing next to me I need to look at?
So the
That
one. Sorry, keep going, keep going.
that's the problem we have to solve because it's just the one problem is these are two separate runes. How do I know which one I'm classifying? Because I need to get a picture of just the one, and I need to turn off. Like that's the other benefit is I can convert pre-drawn, like once I release the right click, I can convert this to another like layer so that I only get a picture of the new one.
So
I'm not doing that now. You can kind of see here that I'm still catching it, but I've had that in mind is all I need to do to get a picture of just this one, even if the camera is right here, is convert this to a layer that the camera doesn't look at. That's how I'm getting the white background for all of them. I'm not looking at the default layer. I'm only looking at a classifier layer.
the one, granted this is pretty niche. The one con to that method is if we did want to do a puzzle where, like I was saying in the beginning, where say you're launched up in the air and you have to like draw a rune or a couple runes real quick. Like puzzles about drawing runes very quickly are slightly harder if you're holding down two buttons, I think. And if when you release matters to that puzzle rather than
I
the
think it feels
system just.
natural. It's not too different from shooting a gun, aiming down scope.
It feels natural, and if you have all the time in the world, you'll never notice it. But any puzzle where you have to draw that swoop and another swoop quickly are going to be harder. It's going to be a thing where like you're holding down, drawing the first shape, letting go at the right time, pressing them both down again, swoop again, let go. I guess it doesn't matter on the
I
second let go.
consider it to be very natural because it is like a first-person shooter control scheme to me. For me, I don't have that problem, but we could see what Jeff and Dave think just to see what the group as a whole. But for me, it's like that is literally just a first-person shooter control scheme. Like it's hold right click to shoot. You're drawing,
I see. I
you
would
know,
say I do
and
think maybe if we do that, maybe a little zoom in on the right click, maybe a little camera zoom on the right click to make
we could
that
have
subconscious
that.
connection in the player's head that like this is like aiming down sights. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, we could have that. I think just having the hand having the hand come up when you hold right click will handle that too. It'll be like you're aiming down sights. Just having the hand raised. That way it feels more like you are aiming down sights. But yeah, for me it is in the same vein as first person shooter. Like if you can spray an automatic weapon first person shooting style, you can draw a rune really quickly. And if we design them properly, hopefully it'll be easy enough.
yeah, I'm not against it. I do. My preference, I still think would be. It feels more natural to me to just draw with one click because I don't associate it with shooting. But like I like I'm not against the double click method, but I do ultimately think it's an edge we could afford to sand off. But I'm flexible on that if other people disagree.
Yeah, to me, it feels like the better way because of the benefits of it. You get the ease of classification, ease of like the code is easier, and it's gonna be like already we're doing something hard, which is classifying runes, and we still have to address the which I'll try to do, between within the next week, maybe over the weekend is I need to try to do the negative classification, the false, which is, and that's just inherently hard thing to do because, let's say we do this symbol, then we need to also draw 100 of these where this is wrong because this has gone too far down. Or, if we do the triangle one, then we have this, and this, but we have to draw 100 of these where we're missing a circle. It needs to recognize that missing a circle is
Right. I mean, I'm
failure.
pretty like I think we should be pretty forgiving on that stuff. Like I would not do it
I
so
think it will be, yeah.
that the one
But
line
like
going a little
the
too far
triangle
down.
one would be a big deal because then you only have two paths, right? So here, if I only have one circle, then the code's going to break because we don't have the second circle if we're trying to say, okay, these circles are always
Yeah,
the source.
that's I agree with that. But on the cross one, I'm saying the bottom line intersecting with the circle too far. I wouldn't.
Yeah, I was just giving an example.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's inherently hard to do, and then having that be done also while trying to figure out which lines belong to the symbol, it becomes even a greater challenge. If we really get the classification, maybe it makes sense to revisit the distance method
We
or
can always go back to
something
the
along those
distance
lines.
method. It's not nothing is precluded by not doing the distance method. Like if we just do
Honestly,
the let go method.
alternative to the distance method, what I would prefer to do is have right click be like you raise your hand and then you wave over the symbol, and then any line you hit with your raycast becomes part of the activated symbol, the classified symbol. That so like I would do something where if I'm holding right click, let's just pretend I'm holding right click here, and then I wave over. I would do woo, 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 and then every line I touch like lights up, and then I release, and
Yeah,
then it
at
activates.
that point, I would say I'd rather have the two buttons in the let go because like
Yeah, it's faster.
it's just faster. It's just like I if we do decide at the end like oh we'd like to do this with just left click, we can always go back and do that at the end. It's only it's figuring out how to smartly have the system figure out when is between two runes is not something I want to get hung up on. I
Yeah,
I just
yeah,
want
I
to
agree.
move forward with being able to start designing sooner. So I'm not married to getting that doing it that
Yeah, I
way.
think we start with the honestly. I think what makes most sense is to start with the double click method, get the classification down and working well, get everything else down and working well, and then as we have that stuff working, we can create like rooms and different methods and put them all in a room like this, and we just go around playing with them and see which one we like the best.
Yeah, I agree.
Once we have a better idea what the game is.
I do also
But
think I want to make I'm gonna spend some time making these runes feel good. Right now, I have the I only have space for 3 runes, even though that now there's 5 scripts. So I have the attract on the square right now. So it's hard to notice, but it is sucking me down to this, and it'll suck me to the
yeah,
wall.
I've seen it. I have played around with it a bit. This is also so I have my line renderer. You can see it's not perfect. My line renderer is in here. This is what I've been drawing with, and I had that bug fixed where it wasn't working to classify. Like I'll improve it over time, but it works well enough. And like the benefit of it is when I cross here, it doesn't fuck up the rest of the thing. It still has a problem with these thresholds right here where as soon as I go over, if I go slow, it's fine. But if I go really fast, because of the
You
just
could just say
because
if
of
the
the
difference
distance between
between
the
the
points.
normal is more than
Yeah, I'll add in fake ones. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
like but
Yeah, I just had to go in and do it. I also should probably do a thing where, well, I guess actually no, I don't want to do that for this. But I was just gonna say there's an algorithm for like, okay, here's a curve I've drawn. If these two points are straight enough, then you just make turn all these triangles into one triangle. But I probably don't want to do that for the drawing.
You're
You
talking
want to
about the
keep those
little
small.
triangles that make up the square half of a point.
That yeah, that make up a I don't know if I have the debug on here. Hold on, let me see. I could show you them. Uh, do I have the debug in? No, I don't. It's not working. But basically, it's a mesh, right? So these are all made up of triangles. Just a bunch of triangles.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think yeah, with the attract repel, I was thinking like, hold on, only one of these fruits has a continuous collider, so all the other ones will magically fall through things. I don't know if that is like a lot of processing power. That might become a thing if someone duplicates a million.
So if they're falling through, yeah, we need to just destroy them if they're falling. We can have something just default destroy
Well,
something once it
they
gets
won't fall
exploded.
through if you turn the collider setting to continuous instead of or what is it? Hold on. It is the rigid body rather, not the collider.
Yeah, I know what
Is
you're talking about. Yeah, I've messed around with it. Yeah, but even then, it's not perfect. I've seen it. It can still happen with. Normally, though, that's a speed thing. But I guess yeah, growing uh,
it
has a
usually
similar
is a speed
effect.
thing. It's happened a lot with the attract repel. I haven't seen it happen with the duplicate combine, although um hold on, I think it's on duplicate right now because before I did it, I didn't get or I didn't get I had more things. Yeah, so it creates these a little. You can hardly see it because of the smoke, but it creates these a little above the ground because if I don't, they will go through the earth.
Hmm.
But with the attract combined, the thing I'm trying to figure out. Last night I was saying, should it suck this out of the player's hand, or should the player have to drop it? And I coded both ways, but I think ultimately I like that it can get sucked out of the player's hand. But the thing is, with the horizontal one, it goes so fast that it hits the. I have to make it eventually, like do a on trigger while inside or whatever it's called, like on trigger stay, I think it's called, um,
Hmm.
where it'll stop it when it gets close enough to the wall, rather than what will happen, I think, is angled up is it'll just okay, it didn't happen that time, but
It'll go through it if it's.
it'll bounce forever because it just gets caught and it
Uh,
hits the wall and then
That's kind of cool, but yeah, it's silly. Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, we'll have to play with it. That's gonna be, that's gonna be done over time. But yeah, I mean, there are, you could do. We don't even technically have to do. None of this velocity math is that complicated. If it really becomes a pain, we could. I mean, everything needs rigid bodies, but we could just do our manual velocity and just calculate how fast it would be until it hits the wall and but I guess then that makes it annoying if there are multiple rigid bodies in there. We probably want to keep the physics system just working on its own. But we could maybe, yeah, we could think about it.
it'll be easy. I'm just that's just I just got to this part last night, so it's not.
Yeah,
I expect to be able to fix it pretty easily. I do want to put like a thing where that if you have the thing in your hand, it doesn't just suck it away right away. Like it'll start to wiggle around first, and then it'll shoot towards the wall. And the same thing with the player. I want once I go into the path, it'll be like boom, and then like suck you to the wall, and then you get your control
yeah,
back. Um, but I also need a thing to. I know for sure that I'm gonna need a thing to like um consider the mass of the thing because it, wildly. I haven't even tried this yet, but let's see.
yeah.
The
Holy
other thing
crap!
is like, yeah,
I don't know where that went, but that probably went clipped through or something. I don't know where that went. Yeah, that's not it.
that's a
It
small
seems to be
one.
rolling.
That's a small one. This, oh yeah, okay, it
There
fell
it
through
is.
the
Yeah, it's
earth.
falling. Yeah.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
you're right. There should be a mass thing, mass based on, so it should increase the mass based on the proportion of the size or something like that.
yeah.
Um,
I was just gonna change the force so that the more mass there was, the harder it would pull the thing, but
yeah, but
the
I just
sooner it
mean
would
like the
stop
grow.
pulling.
Like when you're doing the grow, you'll have to change the mass value. So
Oh
you'll
yeah,
need to
yeah,
make
yeah,
them.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
Or actually, there is a thing I found. I did it for I'm already using it for considering what was it I was using for something for the combine rune I think. And the grow and the grow. Oh, the grow shrink. It just it basically takes your it's not mass, but it and it doesn't affect the rigid body, but like the grow shrink one stops when you're bigger than it, and that's sort of like an indirect way to
Mm.
figure that stuff out. I guess we do want these things to feel heavier as they get bigger though, so we will also need to increase the mass.
Yeah, yeah, we can play around. That's small stuff that can be added easily with the existing physics system. Yeah, all right. I feel good about where we landed. I think maintain the double where we're gonna do the multiple line thing is still is a requirement. Like I think we both agree that that is just something. It's too valuable to give up. Um, and then for now, we'll maintain the double activation, right click, then left click. Um, and what else we want to do here? I'll work on seeing. So when I look at Amazon, the pricing that it is. So if we do 0.5 gigabytes a month, I guess let's maybe it says. Let's see, how many objects does it think we have? If we had 104,858 objects, it would cost just 52 cents upfront. And then if we were doing 1,000 uploads a month, it would be 2 cents a month.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
very reasonable cost. I can't imagine that we'll even hit these.
yeah, yeah. I even if I could pay for space if we need space.
Yeah,
Um,
it's small amount. These are literally less than $1 to do it. So I'll look into it, see, and I'll just keep an eye on it too. If I decide that it's getting too expensive, I'll let you know. Um, Well, I think I do think we need to be designing these things in game. Do as much in game as possible, basically. Um, that way we can identify pain points too as we do this shit, uh, and yeah. So I'll design a tool set to handle that.
oh, this is why I didn't do the colliders at the edge of the triangle because I was trying to avoid the line drawing on those colliders. So here's well,
That
you're
can be fixed too. Actually, it's just the raycast. We just have to tell the raycast to not consider or like make that put these things on a layer that's not considered by the raycast, and then that'll stop.
okay. I can do that.
Yeah.
Probably. I don't know
I would wait
your.
until we get my line render in. We probably could put my line render in now. I was worried about how it would work with because it wasn't classifying, but now that I figured out, oh, it wasn't classifying because of the way because like basically, if you like look at the code, show real quick. No, that's not it. Nick Arcade. Maybe the day we go to clean this all up, um, we can also merge my line render in and fix any issues with your runes that you might
Yes,
have because
I would
it
like
does
to get
change
it
some
into a
outputs.
clean state before we move it out of the Nick Arcade repo, like a state where like if we ever wanted to use it for something else, it wouldn't be in like a messy state like all
Yeah,
my whenever I open up a game maker project from a while ago, like I opened up the slime game recently and I'm just like it doesn't even I hit play and it doesn't even play. Like it's just
yeah. We can do a refactor on all of the code. I wanted there's some code I need to refactor, and we can just go through and refactor. We can even do that as a pair if you want, so we can both understand all the code. All right, so basically, the way this works is I need to do it in a coroutine, which is kind of a pain in the ass because it'll actually wind up being better because I should probably be doing all these in threads. Like these, if you watch my profiler when I do this shit, like put it over here.
Is a coroutine sort of like doing something simultaneously, or is it like a step event in something that is not normally like a step event in Game Maker?
So it's not so the like a lot of people you would think it's a thread, but it's not. It's like a thread is something that happens on a separate CPU core, but this still happens on the main thread. So everything's still happening in the same core. But a coroutine basically is a different way of handling like the request, essentially of isolating the request um, on the main thread. It like trying to say how or to describe it because I don't even fully understand how it works. To be honest, it's like it's a way I think of reserving. So like the game runs and gets this amount of time on the that core, and I believe the coroutine is a way of saying, hey, but also you're going to give this thing some time on that same core, and it's going to get dedicated time to do its thing.
Okay.
I believe that's how it works. And maybe it is even more specific. I believe the way so I'm doing a coroutine, and if you look at like watch the profiler here when I release, you're gonna see we lose a lot of frame rate, and it gets all blue here, right? And that
Yeah.
blue basically means okay, that was because of a script, and it's because of my coroutine because it was delaying basically the CPU to wait for the end of the frame there. I think I could do that in a different thread, and it would be perfectly fine. Um, and it wouldn't cause that whole jump. But basically, the way I'm rendering these drawings is I'm telling them to render the object in this little draw. Like this submits it to be rendered. For every render object call, it submits the mesh to be rendered. But that actually winds up not rendering it. But when I'm going to classify it, it's not actually rendered. Or when I like grab the screen grab. So it is like I'm grabbing the screen grab mid frame in code. I actually needed to tell it to run the coroutine and say wait for the end of the frame before you grab the frame grab.
Okay.
Um,
So is
and
when people talk about
that
cores in a computer, is that what is that analogous to what's running the threads, or what's
That's the multi-threading. Yeah, it's not. It's. I think. If I understand, I don't understand. Do a lot of that programming, so it's relatively new to me. So, I'll. Take everything with a grain of salt. But my basic understanding is a thread is not necessarily a core. You can have virtual threads that are. You can have more threads than you can have cores, kind of things. Sometimes some systems and architectures limit you to only have as many threads as you have cores, stuff like that. But it's not necessarily one to one with a core. But generally, the idea is Unity by default runs everything off of a single core. If you want to get a lot of performance boost, you can run something called I think it's called the Unity job system, which is a user-friendly way of multi-threading.
okay?
Safe multi-threaded cores or code.
And is it as
So
simple
it
as
makes
saying,
multi-threading a little easier.
here's my cores, core 1, core 2, core 3, core 5, core 6, and then saying like, run this, you know, this part of the code only runs on this core, this only runs on this core, etc.
Yeah, there's. I mean, it has there. I don't. I haven't experimented with it too much, so I believe like you could get down to that nitty gritty in certain stuff. I have not looked at Unity's multi-threading stuff yet, other than to know that it exists and leave myself notes in my code to go do that and go look at it. But I think, like in general, though, I think we'll want to run the classifier in its own dedicated thread if we could figure out how to do that, so that it runs,
I was
you know,
thinking, could we do all the AI on a thread so that we don't have to
probably,
worry as
yeah.
much about optimizing it?
Yeah, you could probably do that. That's like what I think. That's what when you're talking about optimizing code, like optimizing games. I bet you a lot of that work is just going through and multi-threading things. Like part of the problem with multi-threading, or one of the additional challenges that you have to worry about with multi-threading is, okay, now I can't guarantee that this will happen before this. X will happen before Y, because if they're running on separate threads, they're going to be running asynchronously at different times. So I need to code in such a way that it doesn't matter if X changes, Y will always have the same result.
Yeah,
Um,
that should be fine. I've been trying to, for
there's also
example,
like race conditions where like if both things are asking for the same resource, but like let's say, okay, I need to save this and load this, so I'm going to lock this file to get ready to save my like update it, and then I'm going to, but I also need this other file. But the thread one has file one, thread two has file two, but they both need the other file. Then they'll literally lock a deadlock, and it'll cause the game to basically freeze. Um,
okay.
but I think the job system handles that, which is why you could theoretically do the multi-threading without the job system, but we should probably start with the job system because we're not familiar with it. And honestly, it might be something that we we wade into slowly, very slowly.
Yeah,
Um,
I have been part of the challenge with moving from GameMaker to Unity is in GameMaker I like it's easy for me to make everything self-contained on the thing I feel like should be doing it, where I feel like I have pretty easy access. Like it's a little more complicated to do it in GameMaker. All I need to do is say um, with blank do blank, right? With this object do this thing, and then everything within the with is just like the other thing is running it. Where
mm,
Unity, I have to identify the component, sometimes then go up to the game object level to then identify another component, and so on. And because of that, I'm trying to be very conscious of where I have, for example, like last night, I had an issue with the attract rune where, so it was for the just so that I could ignore mass for a second and not have to. My original thought was like these things might be different sizes. I want things to get sucked towards the attract at relatively the same speed, regardless of their size or their momentum currently. So I turn the gravity off when they enter and turn it back on when they leave. Right. But that was messing
mm,
with the, if I was holding something and it got sucked out of my hand, I wanted to pick it back up again. To take it out of the path would always then put the gravity back on, and I wanted it off while the player was holding it. So um, instead of like having the it, basically I put everything on the, rather than having this do that and this do that and this do that, everything is done through the like originally there were three things actually. It was the fruit itself, which had its own drop and be dropped and be held. The player, which had a similar thing, and then the rune interacting with it in its own way. And instead, I just had the rune access the player and got rid of the hold and drop stuff on the fruit and did everything through the player. So the rune is telling the player what to do, and the players, everything's going through the player basically. I don't know if that's a good way to do it, but it worked.
well, like you could have if so. One method would be okay. So on the player script, the player control script, or whatever the hell it may be, or you have like an external player controller script, a separate script that is just like you have a method that is public that you say, okay, once you recognize, if you know what the player game object is, go game object player external scripts dot drop item, and then you have inside the player object
Oh, you
a
can
method
access
that.
any public script by going gameobject.external scripts. Is that what you said?
Well, no. I was just saying an example. But if there is
Okay,
a
okay.
public script on it, like I mean, yeah, you can access any script by name though. If you just get component game object dot get
Yeah,
component.
that's what I'm
So if
doing
there's like
currently.
a, yeah, so you just get the component, and then like you like normally you shouldn't be like the general rule of thumb is you shouldn't be accessing um, specific parameters inside another object. Like generally you want to usually there are rules, there are light rules, but there's so technically if you're following rigid programming paradigms, you're supposed to have getters and setters. So even if you are just trying to set something, but for something like drop the object that might have multiple things you have to do, you would just have a method in the player that
Yes,
says
that is how it
drop
works currently.
object.
I had to
Yeah.
make that public, and then the rune tells the player do drop, and then
Yep, exactly. Yeah, that's standard par for the course how it should work. Um, and that's why, and that's why you don't do the game maker way generally, because in the game maker way, there may be, in really big programs, things may be complicated, and I may not know how your player object works, but I do know you have a drop object method, and I don't need to know how that method works. I just need to know that I can call that drop object method instead of me being like, oh, if I just change the whole held object, game object in the player manually, then that'll probably drop it. But then I could cause a bunch of side effects that you like maybe you need to do some bookkeeping or some cleanup before you drop that object, right? Like maybe you need to turn on the object rigid body. So that's why me just changing game object to null is a bad idea, but you having a method that says drop object is nice and clean because I know what it does. I don't need to know how it works. I just know that whatever I know the end result, and I know that you have already taken care of how it will work.
Yeah, I do like that. I do like that aspect of C sharp that like yeah, that is the referencing is harder, but the ultimately the way I mean, I guess you could still technically do that in Game Maker. You could just do with and then call script and have that be a similar function. But it is nice, like it is
It's
nice
a little,
to.
yeah, more intuitive. I don't like the game maker script system, but yeah, go ahead.
I have
Sorry.
no strong preference on either, honestly, but I do love the way that I guess it's not even C sharp. It's just the Visual Studio. Like
Object-oriented programming.
how it like aligns my code for me and how little I have to like hit backspace and tab and this and that and move my brackets around is like none. Like it just knows, and
Yeah, it's
that is
great.
my
That's a
fucking
standard
favorite
approach
thing in the
to
world.
everything.
Like I love that. I don't know
I
why.
use Visual Studio Code, and it does that for me too. It does the this style here, and then it also like I download something to highlight these fix me's and to dos so that like they stand out when I'm looking at them, so I don't forget about that they exist.
Yeah, yeah. I do. I'm definitely coming around on Unity. I need to force myself to do a game jam in Unity because I keep doing it in Game Maker and being like, well, if I want this game to be polished at all, I have to do Game Maker because I'm so much faster at Game Maker. But I need to force myself to do just like I did. Like that's how I learned Unity at all. Was I forced myself to do the slow category and a whole bunch of game jams, and I didn't
Mhm.
finish a single one of them, not a single one. But I did
Well,
learn
I'm
a lot
hopeful
about
for the
Unity.
GMPK jam. If we can get everybody's buy-in, we'll have we'll be able to do it for real. That would be nice. And then with more help, I'm sure you know,
I'll just if
you'll
we
be
want
able
to
to
do
finish the
GMTK,
game
I'll
jam.
basically let you do the programming and I'll just do design and try and work in like a. I mean, I'll do some programming too, probably, but I'll
Yeah,
mostly let
I
you
think
do.
you and I will be the programmers. I usually err on the side of systems programming, but I do still. I mean, in my professional life, I'd like to be a game designer and programmer. I'd like to do both, but it just is the roles that we fit right now. Is that I went to school for programming, so I know a little bit more about just a little bit more about it, which makes it make more sense for me to do these systems that I'm doing, and then you can do the design based programming.
I mean,
It's just
after
in a
with
more
this game,
efficient way.
after we get the rune, after we get 3 runes in, and it's relatively, um, stable and a thing that we're happy with, like, there's no reason that you can't do, like design that you can't do areas and stuff.
Yeah,
I could
I'm
show you
hopeful for as
the
we get the tools and
I've gotten pretty okay at environment design, like how to relatively quickly make an area look okay. Like the area that I made for this thing took me like 30 minutes. Like it's
Yeah.
just, I mean, basically it's just importing a bunch of assets, honestly. But
I mean, we could ideally when we're finally done making, or when we're there, I'll make tool. I will need to see that stuff because I will make tools for making that easier. Hopefully, even if that took 30 minutes, it might be nicer to if we could do that in 10 or something. We'll look at to see how we can make expedite that, but that's a long way off. I do think that this game, if we continue to develop it, I think it's a game that can get traction if we can get some luck of people looking at it. And I think it's a game that we could be developing for 2 to 3 more years before we release, and then hopefully, ideally, in my mind, we would release it in early access in like a year, and then get some money for it so that we can do it, rationalize spending real amounts of time on it. I mean, I can rationalize it, but Dave and Jeff and you can't because you have jobs
yeah,
and
I mean,
children and
it's yeah, I mean the early access. The thing with early access in a game like this is like, what is early access? I can't imagine
you're using
what.
the fake symbols. It would probably just be a playground. It wouldn't be the game.
Yeah, I would call that just like maybe a demo or a prototype or a tech demo more than early access. I think if you call it early access, people will expect more than what we're probably going to be able to put into it. Because I can't imagine like the Outer Wilds early access, right? It
Yeah,
has
it
to
would
really.
probably be something along the lines instead of like, hey, here's our Patreon or our GoFundMe. Um, Pay us if you like what we're doing. Here's an example of what we're doing. By the way, the runes aren't going to be these stupid triangles and circles. They're going to be more complicated. So, and there's going to be puzzles and stuff, but here's a playground that you can play around with and see where we're headed.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm down for that. I think yeah, ultimately, the nice thing about it is like the designy part really is just the runes and the rune interactions. And I know I'm saying I'm making it sound like that's easy. I know it's not, because just like, for example, just last night I was like, I'll just do the attract repel real quick, and then I did it, and then it was like, well, now it feels weird that like the items aren't retracting or repelling. Now I gotta do that. Oh wait, this isn't rotated right. Now I gotta do right all this special case code for what happens if an object is a held object, and this and that stuff's gonna take,
yeah,
like, I don't even know how long it's gonna take, so I can't even estimate on it right now. But but yeah, I think, but once that stuff is done, and if we keep it relatively limited to like 8 or 9 runes or something like that, and this is another reason I like the idea of like, okay, what about these special drawing areas where your rune isn't classified right away, and we could do special kinds of puzzles on there. I like that a
hmm
lot because like that allows for us to not have to like to use the tools we have in a way outside of our normal rule set, where we won't have to, where we can do the unique types of things that normally we might want to invent a whole nother rune and have to balance that whole other rune with the other runes for. So like, yeah.
yeah,
But yeah,
yeah. There's a lot of potential here.
I'm
Yeah, there.
very
Sorry, go ahead.
excited. And
Yeah, I
there's
think
just like a
we're
bunch of
getting to
really
a
easy
point.
ones. Like there's like they like we there's there's like we could do like a tracking one, or like a see-through walls one that's just shaders like that, and as long as we keep the interactions of them relatively simple. That's right. When you start doing the vine thing, my first thought was like, man, it would be really cool to have like a vine rune that like made you something that you could climb on surfaces. But then I was thinking like that would be really neat, but also that sounds like its interactions with other runes would be quite complicated. Like, what happens when that goes in the gross shrink area, in a gross shrink rune? What happens when that does this and this? So I was like, maybe that's something we use for
Yeah,
Necroskull.
I
Not.
mean, we could have, if you could simplify it by saying, okay, default interaction doesn't do it. Fucking destroys the rune. Like,
Well, my
and
thing is like if we're
then
gonna use this in if we're gonna use it in this game, I would have it be a function of the accelerate rune, like you're doing the accelerate rune on a planty area and that gets overgrown real quick, and in that way we can control and we know what in what context it's being used and exactly how it's gonna grow, and then maybe for like Necro Skull we could do a more involved thing with it.
yeah, we could play around. I mean, I need to figure out still how efficient it even is. Like, I don't know. It takes a decent amount of triangles to make, but I don't know how many triangles are normal for a game in modern, Unity with modern hardware. Like, I needed that stuff will just need to be figured out.
A
Especially with like I have my computer can have trouble running the unfortunately the grass shaders where on your stuff in the magic farm, which is a bummer because it looks really cool, but I'm sure we can figure out how to optimize it. It's just one of those things that needs to just be considered over time. But yeah, it is here, let me turn off the stupid line because it looks gross, but yeah, it does work.
I mean,
Woo.
I know a single model can hold something like 65,000 triangles or something like that.
Yeah, I
So
just don't know how many triangles are something can take before it becomes, you know, before it becomes an issue for rendering and a time sink. Like, where the hell is analysis profiler? Let's look at the profiler here. All right, so we got our profiler. Um, let's shrink it down actually because I need to be able to see this. All right, so right now we're running 60 frames a second currently, about like a little under 60 frames. We're also running two scenes here, so maybe if I just did the scene view, it'd be a little more efficient. Yeah, so now we're getting like 100 frames per second with just the scene view. Um, and now let's see if it jumps when I move things around. We're looking for big rendering jumps. It does seem to go up. You see that?
only while it's doing it though, only while it's
Well, so
growing,
so
it's
here's
like,
nothing, right? I'm at 0, so I'm at 100 frames per second, and now here's everything.
oh, does it zoom in and out based on where you based on the
Oh, it looks like
average?
it's still staying at 100 frames per second. Yeah, it zooms in and out. It's kind of a hard to see, but it actually like right now we're at even so there's that was a garbage collector thing. Let's turn off the garbage collector. We don't want to look at it right now. All right, so right now we're rendering, um, and we're averaging again 100 frames per second. Are these spikes? I wonder. Normally that's like garbage collector, but I don't know what the hell they are. Looks like it's the player root. Wait for grabs. I'll figure that out later. But let's just for now see if having more on the screen directly affects. And actually, maybe we should just do the game view because that's what it will look like in reality, right? All right, let's get to a nice even area. So we're averaging again 100 frames, but somewhere above that. And then whoop, big spike for probably calculating the shit there.
It looks to me like it's not changing other than when it's growing, other than when it's
Yeah,
figuring out where to put the triangles.
yeah, it looks pretty good, doesn't
But
it?
I mean, like the just think about how many triangles are probably on the screen when you're like
Yeah, I know. It's just it's just one of those things where like so like if we were doing well, like what would it look like if there were six of these? Would we only be able to do one vine at a time, or should I like figure out programmatically how to make it look like I'm only modeling one vine here? Maybe I could figure out how to model like a cluster of vines. You know.
it probably
Um,
would be better to do one thing that splits into multiple paths rather than having multiple things
I
that
think
all have
there's
their own.
Twisted torus. I could do like this, something like this, right? I think there's math for this. Something like that
Yeah.
with more rounded edges. But yeah, there's math for a torus. It's easy enough to look up what the equation for generating one of these is. Uh, yeah, I'll have to figure it out.
Yeah. I mean,
I mean, I guess right now I'm just doing it's a cylinder mesh, right? So if I look at the vines, do I have? Did I not do that on this one? I thought I had better debug draw controls here, but that might be on.
I was more imagining something like rather than twisting this shape to have this grow off its own. You were saying like, oh, what if there was multiple? I don't know if you meant like if you just copied and pasted this object 6 times, would it blah blah blah? I was saying like if we're gonna do that to get the effect, you might as well have one object programmatically, just at random points, maybe make another cylinder that pops off this and follows a different
Oh yeah,
spline.
I'm more worried about the. I don't like. I'm not seeing a big script impact here. In terms of like the script processing stuff, it's all rendering. So like any change or any issue I think that we're gonna have is gonna be had on the front of rendering, not on script stuff. So I think that like having them branch off would effectively be the same amount of workload. I mean, we can add stuff to this, and it might look cooler. Like this still needs a texture, right? This is completely just green. Once you add a texture to this, it might look a lot better. Like where if you add a texture with a normal map, where we're mapping normals to like, if we can figure out a repeating normal map that the normal map is a thing where it'll change, it'll make it look like it has divots and dents even though it doesn't have it on
Yeah,
the
yeah.
texture. So if we map that to this, like figure out a good way to do normal mapping and that kind of thing, then this might just look fine as one vine and might just look perfectly cool. And then we, like you had mentioned before, we just do those little growing sprout leaves and shit. Maybe with that other method, we'll figure that out. But those can just be prefabs that get expanded. Um,
That would be cool. I'm trying to think of I've been trying to think of runes to use this in, and like I said, I was thinking maybe the accelerate for like vine growing, or like or even like if you could, or even using. I thought about using it as like, could you map an effect to like the end of it, or like do something where like we might want to have something in the environment that gives the player the hint of what a rune shape is, where like it's not growing super fast like this, but it's slowly growing, and it's going to grow into the shape of of one of the runes if you at a certain time, or like something like that.
yeah, I mean, we could definitely do that. That's totally, what this is for. Drawing something that does a specific path is exactly what this type of spline is for. So basically, this type of spline guarantees that. I guess I'm not showing the control points that generated this spline, um, but they're basically the control points, the points of the line. So they're here,
I see the
here,
white
here,
dots. Yeah, I can
here,
see the
here.
white dots.
Well, the white dots are like the calculated points for the vine to travel, and the control points are like you see. There's a white dot here in the corner. There's a white dot here in the corner. There's a white dot here in the corner. Basically, the type of spline I'm doing is called a Catmull ROM, and it guarantees that it will. They call it interpolate. That it'll pass through every point that you have specified, and then it just calculates the path, a nice smooth path that is not as basically okay. So how do I make a path that looks nice and is is like gentle and doesn't have these lines like the line renderer does. That's what the math for the spline does. Is say, okay, how do I make this smooth and pretty, and that's the whole point of it.
Right on. What happens if you just draw that black? If you, how easy is it to rearrange that black thing? Could you put it into like a corkscrew kind of shape pretty easily?
I have to do it from this mode, but yeah, I should theoretically in this mode in uh, edit points view. Okay. I think I can just drag it around that.
Right on. That does look super easy.
Okay. Oh boy.
Although
It's real hard to move things in
yeah,
3D.
yeah, it is.
How did you get so far away? Oh my god, just come here. Where the fuck are you going? Let's reset to this one did not go well. Here we go. Let's move you this way. Let's move you
Maybe
down.
look at it top down and try to make like a spiral. Although I guess it could get real low, but it would at least give the effect of like, um,
Like a vine
yeah,
climbing something.
right.
Okay, so that's kind of we can do this. Ready? That's this way. Okay, I got this. I know what I'm doing now. Move that in. You here, here, here. Move you up. Let's place all your Y's actually where I want them first. You're above that. You're above that. You're above that. Okay.
Yeah, and then from up here, sort of try and make it like a spiral shape. Even if it does end up being super tall or something, or one of the pieces really low down, I think you'll still get the basic effect. Maybe like a,
All right. Is that a spiral enough? Maybe we should spiral it a little more.
I think, yeah, put those last 2 points. I think you could put the very last one like right in the center of it, and then yeah, there you go. And then you could literally just stick a tree in there.
All right. Let's give us a proof of concept here. So let's see it in action. All right. So there's our line render. Let's run it. And let's see. I haven't actually messed with it, so we'll
Although
see
actually, you
how.
probably made it more smooth than you needed to, right? You can make it just jagged,
Yeah,
almost like a square. Yeah, I like that. I like that. But yeah, like
line
theoretically, you
render.
could make it like a square spiral, if you know what I mean, and then the interpolation will smooth out all that shit for you.
Yeah. So if I do line render, yeah, we could literally make the line render like a tool to manually define paths.
That does make me want to make an actual rune out of it though, like a vine rune.
I think I need to tie it to a. I need to tie it to the line drawing. I just need to make it. I mean, I need to let people draw with it, draw a line, and have the vine come out. And I think that will just feel cool.
Yeah,
And I
I
want to do,
agree.
and it'll be a good test of its performance. I think I just need to do that real quick and see what that feels like, um,
Because
and see
also
how that
like
performs.
that you could just, you know, even if it's like we don't use it for every like we don't end up doing like a vine
A
rune.
little
You
more
could
jagged.
you could tie an effect to it. You could like the rune activating if we're gonna have if we well, I guess we're moving away from the um, activation ritual press button thing and just leaning more towards like oh it activates when so you let go of the button and then this thing starts doing something right like
Mm-hmm. We want it to be more jagged, right? Not jagged enough, I think, for our
although
tests.
you'll need to if you're gonna map it to the line thing with the lifting up and it's not a one swoop right you'll need to delay the beginning of one till the first is finished.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's the thing, right? It'll be so these are all like I've designed it in such a way that this is a T. So if we just take every point as its own line and the vines come out of each individual line at the same time, then we can ensure that they all always get to the end at the same time because this T value says basically how far you are along the line. And I have it like so basically okay, explaining it at a lower level first. So between 0 and 1, so the less than one numbers, like the float point, the decimal point is like how far along that segment it is, and the number itself is which segment is on. Like the whole number is which segment. So I'm 1.9, so I've gone through one segment and I'm 0.9 of the way through the next segment, right? 90% of the way through the next segment. So these we can basically we can line if we make sure they all have the same amount of segments, we can line it up so that the vine grows the same. If we start a vine on every line that the player has drawn, the vine grows on every grows this is hitting the same length, is the same proportional length on everything, right? You know what I mean?
I know what you mean. This it's a lot like
Yeah,
lerp. Like if I put
yeah.
the lerp on two things and tell one thing to go all the way across the screen and the other one to go halfway across the screen, they're gonna
It's
arrive at their
literally a
endpoints
loop.
at the same.
Yeah, yeah. It's literally a linear interpolation.
But
I'm lerping between these points
what
is
I'm
what I'm
saying though
doing.
is if I draw the triangle and we put an effect to draw the line tied to this thing to like not draw it because the player needs to see it as it's drawn, but like say we light up the line using this and tying some shader or effect to it and to light up the rune and show you that it's on. Is that
Mm.
light up part going to happen with the triangle? Is it going to do the triangle first and then say it's what it is now and then a circle and then a circle, or are the circles going to start drawing at the same time as the triangle and all the circles, both circles in the triangle finish drawing at the same time?
We should be
Both are
able to do
cool.
whatever we want. Yeah, we should be able to figure it out, to decide how we want it to work. It doesn't matter. We could have it done in the order that I could have, if we, let's say this is a rune, I drew this, and then have it finish this, and then start the other two, we could do it after that, just in terms of like, based on time and order the player drew them. We could have it do that. We could have it do it all at the same time. It really is all possible.
This is why I just thought of this. This is why I was thinking of the weak. This was the weakness I had thought of before for the holding down the button is if you and not doing like a button press activate the rune thing is if you want to set up several runes and then activate them in a sequence one after the other, you can't do that with the let go method. If it classifies and activates, it can classify with the let go method just fine, like that we can do it that. But if we don't have the press button to make rune go thing, then you couldn't do for example, the one we came up with where like, okay, what if there's a puzzle where you need to draw a rune out and then lure an enemy
Yeah,
over
I
to
see what
it,
you're
and
saying. Yeah.
that's why we did that. I forgot about
Yeah,
that.
that's a possible. Yeah, that's something we should consider. Yeah. Yeah, they'll just activate right away. I mean, maybe there's a maybe it's a yeah. It's hard to say. We'll have to play around with it because if we have these reagents in your hands, then maybe you can just unequip the reagent and then draw it, and then yeah, it still works the same way. It classifies the rune. But then and then it gets like a special glow so that you know that you properly drew it, and then it won't activate until you
Yeah, something
hit the
like that.
activation button.
Something like that. And we could still do the hang in the air, hang time puzzle that way too, because you can go up once, right? Draw it, and then come up another time to activate it, and then you could, and then that eliminates the timing. The whole thing I was saying, we're like, oh, it might be hard to hold down two buttons, but like,
Yeah,
yeah, okay, that's the
yeah.
way. That's why we had to originally said that.
But yeah, I think I need once. All right, first step one is make that room that we can all design in. Step two, add this to some rune or some new scene where people can just draw a line and get the vine to grow around it and just play with it, and we'll see how that affects performance and that kind of thing. And also, I just think people think it'll feel cool and inspire maybe Dave and Jeff to work on it a bit. Because it'll just feel cool to be able to do that kind of thing. And then we can. This is not too terribly different. This is probably technically more complicated than doing an ice shard path kind of thing.
Yeah,
Like the same thing, except instead of doing a vine, just have shards coming out. You know, and with the right shader, that could look really cool.
yeah, hell yeah.
And then you could just have a path of like vines or ice shards come out until it gets to the end, and then activates the stasis rune or something.
Yeah, I think for
Yeah.
setting up the general drawing, I mean, this isn't a totally necessary thing, but if we could get it so, yeah, so that people can draw the rune, then immediately after it's classified, it starts doing some sort of glowing effect with this stuff, and then after that, they need to. I could do this part, which is after that they press a button and you do an animation of some kind, and then it whatever it glows stronger or starts to emit particles or something, and you know
Yeah.
it's actually active.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, I will. I'll work on I'll work on that stuff this weekend. See if I can get the AWS integration working. Then we could have a public bucket, one shared bucket for all of us to draw in. Um, I'll make tools. It might take more than a weekend to do, but I'll have to do. I need to do the thing where you mess with the editor over here, and not just program in Unity, but program for the editor. But I'll figure it out.
I so tomorrow I'm not gonna do anything tonight because I haven't slept a lot the last 2 nights. But I the with Sarah's wedding on Friday will be coming up. We'll be definitely staying over Friday night into Saturday and maybe Saturday night into Sunday with you guys. So I probably won't get anything done after tomorrow night. So I'm gonna try tomorrow night to get the wiggle and attract stuff to make the attract and repel stuff feel good and not just like right now it sort of just feels like what the fuck is happening? I'm moving in another direction. So to get that stuff feeling good, I need to on the combine and duplicate. The what actually comes out of the combine is going to be very specific to a designed area and what's there. So I can't really do anything with that yet, but I can put in the part where it looks at a prefab of one thing, looks at the prefab of another thing, and says what new prefab do I make from this? Just set
Yeah,
up
I
like
mean,
a
we could do
basic.
that. Yeah, I do. I am still considering doing that through math, through like
So
combining.
there is just a straight up method called mesh combine. The thing is like I thought about doing that too, and it would be neat. Something not unlike God Hand, right? Like,
Mm.
but like the thing with that is like essentially what you're doing then.
Does this
And
not just like put them all like as separate points in the same mesh though? Like it treats them as the same mesh, but they are
it
still separate.
it treats them as this. It combines it basically like if I put a square and a circle, and the circle was bigger than the square, it's just going to be a square. You know what I mean? One would get eaten by the other, I think is how it works. It might
I
be.
thought that the combined mesh thing is literally just takes the points and puts them under the same mesh,
Yes,
and the
its actual
indices.
utility is like a performance thing, so that you can like define several meshes as part of one object or something like that. So, but like there is a way of doing this. So there is a way of doing this where we do it programmatically or mathematically, but then like what we end up getting, I think, in the end is something more complicated and potentially less interesting than just coming up with the combinations ourselves. Because, like, unless you allow the player to define how they're being combined, which I think is too much, honestly, it's too complicated. Um, if we were gonna do it like that, it might as well just work exactly like God Hand, and it's just like a gluing things together thing. Um, but like if you do it programmatically, it's without the player defining it, then the best way to do it would just be to sit to look at the meshes and say where would be a good spot for these to connect, and maybe we can come up with a good rule for that. But I do just think that ultimately, like, having a unique thing come out of it that we literally design is going to be
Try
simpler
to feel the best. Yeah.
and better feeling.
Yeah, probably. I mean, that's definitely how they do it in the Topka, as they say, as the kids say.
What the fuck is Topka?
Topka, Tears of the
Oh,
Kingdom.
oh, 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 yeah. Yeah, like,
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably the best way to do it. It's just the problem is you just then have to do that for every object, and it becomes like a huge endeavor for modeling. But
like, I mean, I think ultimately for modeling, ultimately what I think I'll end up doing is like, it'll for the most part be like the
just positions that these two meshes
one
is
object's
put
model
like
assumes the
embedded in.
texture of another model,
Yeah.
and the real gameplay, like implications of it are like it's just going to take all the components, all the unique scripts of both those things, and throw it on a new thing, throw all of them on a new thing, and all of the, and you know, read up all the variables and put the same values for all those variables for all the components, and that's where like the programmatic, like, emergent part of it comes in terms of like how it looks. I think it's basically going to be like, put this skin on this model, like
Okay, yeah, we can figure that. That could be, yeah, a simplified way of doing it.
like here's
We could
a
even mess with like we could if we could find like a stretchy, think of like a stretchy material. You could make something like a weird whip kind of thing, where like we actually extend the model's vertices and when they're whipping kind of thing. And
I have wanted to
I don't
mess
know, we
with
could
the
mess around with
soft
that.
body physics stuff in Unity. I've seen some cool
Yeah,
stuff made with the soft body physics stuff in Unity. I don't know how those interact with rigid bodies or if they're the same system though. Um,
we'll have to figure it out. There's a lot to figure out.
but
All right,
yeah,
it's
like,
getting late. I gotta eat some dinner.
all right, I will catch you later.
Yeah, I will. But I will. Yeah, work on that stuff. And yeah, I think we're doing the rehearsal tomorrow because Sammy's a photographer. But I'll be around otherwise.
Right on.
Later.
Later.